In this video, we will talk about diets in MS and in particular about Paleolithic and ketogenic diets. And let's start with a Paleolithic diet. The Paleolithic diet recommends to eat plenty of lean meat and fish, green leafy vegetables, fruit, especially berries, animal fat, especially omega-3 fatty acids, and vegetable fat. While it recommends eliminating from the diet dairy products, cereals such as wheat, rice or oats, legumes such as beans, lentils or soybeans, and sugar. With this food recommendation, the Paleolithic diet is recommending a significant increase in the consumption of lipids and proteins and a very significant reduction in the consumption of carbohydrates. Dr. Terry Wahls, a physician, professor of internal medicine and researcher at the University of Iowa who is also affected by MS, published in 2008 a modified Paleolithic diet for people with MS that is also known as Wahls' diet. This diet, in addition to the typical recommendations of the Paleolithic diet, specifies that you consume a minimum of 9 servings of fruits and vegetables daily. And unlike a classic Paleolithic diet that recommends eliminating all grains, the Wahls diet allows for the consumption of 2 weekly servings of gluten-free grains. Finally, this diet also recommends physical exercise, meditation, and electrical stimulation. In 2015, Dr. Wahls introduced a new Paleolithic diet called the Wahls Elimination Paleolithic Diet, which differs from the previous one in that it eliminates nightshade vegetables such as tomatoes, potatoes, aubergines, or peppers, which are vegetables rich in lectins, substances that increase intestinal permeability and the activation of the immune system. This diet also recommends nutritional supplements and self-massage. Regarding energy, the Paleolithic diet recommends reducing the energy we obtain from carbohydrates and increasing the energy we get from lipids. It specifically recommends that 70% of the energy is obtained from lipids, 20% from proteins, and only 10% from carbohydrates. Regarding the time of food intake, the Paleolithic diet does not give recommendations. The Paleolithic diet is based on the idea that during the evolution of humans, they have been hunters and gatherers for more than 2 million years and farmers and herdsmen for only about 12,000 years. For this reason, the Paleolithic diet considers that our body had much more time to adapt to food from hunting and gathering than to food from agriculture and livestock, so the latter can be more harmful. The Paleolithic diet therefore recommends consuming foods that were consumed prior to the development of agriculture and livestock, such as berries, vegetables, seeds, bushmeat, oily fish, or fruit oils. While it recommends avoiding products that come from agriculture and livestock, such as cereals, dairy products, sugar, salt, or potatoes, what it means to recommend a very low consumption of carbohydrates and cereals, which are the main source, are eliminated, and a high consumption of lipids and proteins. There are some observational studies that support a beneficial role of the Wahls diet in MS, such as the study of a person with secondary progressive multiple sclerosis, who, after following a Wahls diet for 6 months, went from wheelchair dependence to mild walking disability. Or a pilot study in which 6 people affected by progressive multiple sclerosis reported an improvement in fatigue, disability, mood, cognitive function, and quality of life after 1 year following this diet. And there is also a clinical trial in 17 people with MS who followed this diet or not for 3 months and reported an improvement in fatigue and quality of life in the individuals who had followed the diet. The Wahls Elimination Paleolithic diet has also been examined in a clinical trial that supports it. In this trial, 15 people affected by MS were analyzed, a part of whom followed the Wahls Elimination Paleolithic diet, another a ketogenic diet, and the rest a normal diet. This study demonstrated improvement of fatigue and cognitive function in people who followed the Wahls Paleolithic Elimination diet. Another clinical trial is currently being carried out with 100 people affected by MS, in which the Wahls Elimination diet and the Swank Calorie Restriction diet are compared, but the results have not yet been published. Another diet that has been proposed for people affected by MS is the ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet recommends consuming meat such as red meat, ham, sausage, bacon, chicken, and turkey, oily fish such as salmon, tuna, trout, or sardines, eggs, butter and cream, cheese, walnuts, olive, coconut, or avocado oil, avocados, low-carb vegetables like leafy greens, tomatoes, bell peppers, or onions, and condiments such as salt, pepper, aromatic herbs, and spices. While it advises against the consumption of sweets, cereals such as wheat, rice, or oats, products made with flour, fruit, except small portions of berries, legumes such as beans, lentils, or chickpeas, low-calorie products, sauces, processed vegetable oils, and alcohol. Regarding energy, the ketogenic diet, like the Paleolithic diet, recommends that 70% of the energy is obtained from lipids, 20% from proteins, and only 10% from the carbohydrates. Regarding time of food intake, the ketogenic diet does not give recommendations. When we fast for prolonged time of more than 12 hours, in order to obtain the energy we need for the functioning of our body, we consume glucose, protein, and part of the fat that we had stored. If the fasting is prolonged, in order to continue obtaining energy, the mobilization of fat is increased. The glycerol from fat continues to go to the liver to produce glucose, while the fatty acids continue to go to tissues and organs that can use them for energy. But furthermore, to ensure sufficient energy supply, fatty acids are also directed to the liver, where they participate in the production of ketones that pass into the blood and can be used as an energy source by many tissues and organs, including the brain. Ketones seem to have a neuroprotective effect, so their production is considered beneficial. The ketogenic diet tries to reproduce what happens during prolonged fasting through a diet that is very low in carbohydrates, that is, in glucose, and very rich in lipids, that is, in glycerol and fatty acids. Regarding the scientific evidence, a clinical trial has been published in which 20 people affected by MS who followed this diet for 6 months were analyzed. It demonstrated a reduction of body mass index and fat, improvement in fatigue and depression, and a reduction of serum leptin levels. However, it is important to note that the adherence to the diet at 6 months was only 75%, which indicates the difficulty to follow this diet. There is also the clinical trial, which we have just discussed, in which 15 people affected by multiple sclerosis were analyzed, one part of which followed the Wall's elimination Paleolithic diet, another part a ketogenic diet, and the rest a normal diet. In the patients who followed the ketogenic diet, an improvement was observed in glucose and insulin levels, but not in the clinical parameters associated with MS. In another clinical trial, in which 111 people affected by MS were analyzed, one part followed a ketogenic diet and the rest intermittent fasting. Both diets demonstrated an effect on fatigue and quality of life. As we have just seen, there is considerable scientific evidence that supports a possible beneficial effect of the Paleolithic and ketogenic diets in MS, although in general the studies published to date have been carried out in a small number of patients. Therefore, from our point of view, more clinical trials are needed to confirm their benefits in MS. Considering this, and the fact that they are diets that are difficult to adhere to, we do not recommend people with MS to follow these diets as first option, at least not until we have more scientific evidence. Diets with such high amounts of lipids can cause problems, and based on current evidence, we do not believe that it is justified to recommend them in MS. We are aware that there are people affected by MS who follow these diets and are very satisfied. If you know any of these people and you're convinced that it may be a good option for you and decide to follow one of these diets, we would recommend that you follow them for a short period of time and then continue with a healthy, Mediterranean-type diet. From our point of view, eliminating simple carbohydrates is recommended and even reducing the consumption of complex ones, but we are not in favor of a total elimination of all carbohydrates.